Hi, everyone. How are we doing today? Can't believe we're packed here. Well, so to start off, I have a confession to make. I am a millennial. That may seem like a silly thing to confess, but lately that label incurs a lot of judgment. We're very misunderstood, we millennials, and I don't think many people have actively taken the time to understand why we have the reputation that we have. I don't believe many people have really thought about the upbringing that many of us had, how drastically the world has changed and how quickly it has changed, and specifically how those two factors have impacted how we view failure and how we view success. We have been raised to live very checklisted lives from very early on. These checklists start early with the ballet classes, the soccer practices, the clubs and the honor societies, the AP, IB, honor roll, dual enrollment classes that I'm sure all of you have gone through. There is this crippling pressure that I believe previous generations have never had to aspire to. We live these checklisted lives up until college, where we are expected to figure out what we want to do next. We live these checklisted lives, and that has left very little room to build self-efficacy. When we graduate, people ask some variation of the question, well, why did the millennial cross the road? They want to know what our motivation is and what drives us. And unfortunately, it is a very outdated and unhealthy perception of what it means to be successful. We millennials are entering the workforce a little bit broken, a little bit bruised before we even have a chance to experience the world and any true failure. If you grew up like I did, in an average middle-class suburban home with two loving parents, then college was probably the first time you ever really experienced failure. When I got to college, I thought things would be as easy as they had been my entire life. After all, I was top of my class, played on multiple varsity sports teams, did the clubs and the student government. What I didn't realize was that everyone else on campus had the same exact resume that I had. I was not prepared for the increased level of competition, although I'm sure my teachers tried to tell me. The rules changed, but I didn't feel like I knew what to do. My identity that I had built so far was so deeply wrapped up in my successes. I struggled. I failed a few classes. I internalized criticisms that I'd never before had to deal with, and I generally struggled to adapt to my ever-increasing workload. I caught a break, and I was offered an internship with the James Madison University Marketing Department, and that job gave me the confidence that I needed, and would later need, in my first design job after college. So, I graduated, and within 6 months, I had a job at a boutique design firm in DC. I was the millennial that crossed the road and reached her destination. Success, right? Well, a year later, my employer and I decided to part ways. We had some fundamental disagreements, and that resulted in me being fired from that job. I was distraught. I felt like an imposter. I couldn't even imagine applying for another design job, and I was considering if I should even stay in my career field. I took a year off from that part of my life to observe humanity in its natural habitat, to conduct an anthropological study, if you will. I became a bartender. I was actually pretty good at it, and I enjoyed interacting with a diverse group of people. I even gained some confidence when I realized that if I could communicate effectively with a drunk person, I could communicate with anyone. In actuality, that time off ended up being the gap year that I needed to gain some time and space and some perspective so I could figure out what I was going to do, what this whole thing meant for my perception of failure and success. This time ended up being a rapid period of growth, but this is in retrospect. There was a lot of pain, there was a lot of hard work, there was a lot of self-judgment and doubt. I didn't know why I needed this time, but I felt in my gut it was something that I had to do. There was some lesson to be learned, I just didn't yet know what it was. That lesson, it turned out, was that I had a wholly inaccurate definition of what it meant to be a failure and what it meant to achieve success. So I was becoming more self-aware. I was learning how to grow and challenge previous stigmas. I was even learning how to date. And just like my mother always hoped for, I met a nice man who happened to be one of my bar patrons. In a time that I had perceived to be the lowest point of my existence so far, life surprised me, and I found my soulmate, a lovely naval officer from Virginia Beach. And in circumstances that I never imagined could provide the atmosphere to experience deep and lasting love, I found a soulmate after such a crazy failure. Fast forward a year, I moved to Virginia Beach. I rejoined my career path as William and Mary's visual design coordinator, and I got engaged. Is now when I could say that I reached success? So, the big question, why did the millennial cross the road? Why should the millennial cross the road? The motivation cannot be to get to the other side, to get to success, because one of life's biggest secrets is that success is not a singular destination that you can reach. You shouldn't aim to get to the other side, to cross the road, but rather to stay on the road. Maintain your course, and know that these failures that you perceive to be that you perceive to be roadblocks are actually building blocks. That order is really important if you take anything away from today. So what about when it comes to defining success? I personally rely on Winston Churchill's definition, which he describes as moving from one failure to another without loss of enthusiasm. So what I propose you walk away with today is this. Number one, take every failure not as a loss, but as a learning opportunity. If you view failure as a process of trial and error, the fear, the self-doubt, and the judgment will start to fade away. Number two, know that you don't actually have to cross the road. You just have to stay on the road. Every failure you experience will challenge you, and you can either get off the road and stop moving or charge forward relentlessly. And number three, learn to train your mentality away from the personalization of I am a failure to I have experienced failure. Usually, it's not the failure itself that will hold you back, but rather the paralyzing and abstract fear of failure with a capital F. In reality, my failures and my setbacks aren't over. My life is not perfect, and I will surely experience setbacks again. Now, I have learned to find comfort in the fact that failure is a normal and acceptable part of life, particularly of young adult life. I firmly believe that failure is not a shameful word, and I will continue to talk openly about my deviations from the path, and I encourage you to do the very same thing. When I hit a roadblock at this point, I usually remember that it's not a road closure. Every failure is not a make or break experience for your future. We can and we will keep moving forward. We just have to be flexible and courageous enough to stay on the road. Thank you.